Things we wish Jesus hadn't said. My name is David Madison. This is the 26th of June, 2019, and this is episode 8 in a series of flash podcasts on that topic. Mark Twain said that the best cure for Christianity is reading the Bible. So let's take a close look and see why Mark Twain was absolutely correct. This Jesus quote comes from the Gospel of John, chapter 6, verses 53 to 57. Very truly I tell you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Those who eat my flesh and drink my blood have eternal life, and I will raise them up on the last day. For my flesh is true food and my blood is true drink. So whoever eats me will live because of me. Transferred into Christian ritual, this is known as taking communion. There are 3 points I want to make about this. When I was a kid growing up in northern Indiana in a Methodist church, no one was there to tap me on the shoulder on communion and say, "This is pretty gross, you know." Nor was there anybody there to tell us, had our minister skimped on his study of Christian origins, no one was there to tell us this was an element of the mystery cults that flourished at the time Christianity was born. The other mystery cults also had secret knowledge, they had holy rituals, and they had sacred meals. They all boasted that these were the ways to gain eternal life. The second point, it's hard to come up with a better example of magical thinking. How in the world could eating flesh and blood, even if it belonged to a god, bestow eternal life? Harry Potter fans will remember the Polyjuice potion that Hermione brewed for Harry and Ron to drink so that they could transform themselves within minutes into the bodies of other people. That's fun magic in fantasy literature. These verses in John's Gospel are grotesque magic in religious fantasy literature. Eternal life is a product that different religions have been selling for thousands of years. Christianity got on the bandwagon too. But eating a god to live forever is not real-world thinking. It is magical thinking. It's bad religion. It's bad theology. The third point, this is the Eucharist on steroids. The earliest statement of the Eucharist that we have is in Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 11, written long before John's Gospel, and it has a much calmer tone. When Jesus had given thanks, he broke the bread and said, "This is my body that is for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way, he took the cup also, after supper, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me." Paul boasts that he didn't find out anything about Jesus from other people. He got everything he knew through visions. These words from a vision eventually found their way, a few decades later, into Mark's Gospel, who put them into the setting of a Last Supper, and Matthew and Luke copied those words for their Gospels. But guess what? John removed them from his version of the Last Supper. John's reworking of these words is much more revolting, and he puts this version earlier when Jesus was preaching at a synagogue in Capernaum. And guess what again? Even some of his own followers were grossed out. We read this: "When many of his disciples heard it, they said, 'This teaching is difficult. Who can accept it?' And because of this, many of his disciples turned back and no longer went about with him." Those disciples who walked away had it right. This text in John 6 is straight out of mystery cult thinking, the magical properties of eating a god. What an embarrassment that this text ended up in the New Testament. But for those who insist that the Gospels tell the true story of Jesus, that they do not lie, then we have to add John 6:53 through 57 to that long list of things we wish Jesus hadn't said.